For most of human history, money didn't exist, and people were fine. Need grain, but only have extra goats. You had to find someone who wanted goats and happened to own grain. If that person didn't exist, trade would collapse. Hunger followed quickly. A bad harvest didn't just mean empty stomachs, it meant nobody wanted what you had. Nothing to trade, nothing to survive on. Yet, out of all the strange systems humans have ever created, money may be the strangest because money isn't actually real. It never was. A coin is metal, a banknote is paper. A number inside your bank account is just light on a screen. Somehow, though, billions of people agreed those things meant value, and modern civilization runs entirely on that shared belief. If you're fascinated by the hidden systems shaping human history, subscribe now because this story gets much stranger from here. Here's the part most people never hear. No king invented money. No philosopher designed it. No empire gathered and decided to create a universal medium of exchange. The process was far messier than that. Stranger still, the world's first real money wasn't gold or silver. It wasn't rare jewels or precious metals. It was grain. And its rise began because a temple in ancient Mesopotamia was drowning in an administrative nightmare. Around 5,000 years ago, the city of Uruk in Mesopotamia faced a problem no human settlement had ever encountered before. By ancient standards, the place was unimaginably massive, tens of thousands of people packed into a single city, all dependent on one another to survive. Farmers grew food, potters made tools, priests managed rituals, soldiers protected the walls, scribes tracked supplies. No village had ever operated like this. A farmer couldn't simply swap goods with his neighbor anymore. Entire professions existed that produced nothing edible at all. So how do you feed a soldier? How do you compensate a scribe? How do you keep track of thousands of workers spread across a growing city? Surprisingly, the solution didn't come from merchants or marketplaces. It came from temples. Temples in ancient Mesopotamia functioned as governments, banks, granaries, and employers all at once. They stored enormous quantities of harvested grain and distributed portions to workers throughout the city. Eventually, keeping track of who was owed what became impossible to manage from memory alone. So they started writing things down. That sounds like a boring administrative detail. In reality, it changed human civilization forever. Archaeologists have discovered clay tablets from Uruk dating back to roughly 3000 BCE, among the oldest written objects on Earth. Many of those tablets record debts measured in grain and silver. One worker, so many days worked, so much grain owed. Human writing didn't begin with poetry or philosophy, it began with accounting. Then something unexpected happened. Once people could track grain debt through written records, they no longer needed to carry the physical grain itself. Instead, they traded the receipts. The promise mattered more than the commodity sitting in storage. Suddenly, value became portable. That was the real birth of money, not the grain, the promise. And here's the unsettling part. Once humans learned to trade promises instead of objects, civilization changed permanently. If you're still watching, comment the word promise below, because the next part explains why entire empires trusted seashells more than gold. Imagine you're a merchant in ancient China around 1200 BCE. You want silk. The silk seller doesn't care about your cattle or tools. He wants cowrie shells, small, smooth shells collected from distant oceans hundreds of miles away. Now everyone wants cowrie shells. Trade starts revolving around them. People begin storing them, counting them, protecting them. Their value doesn't come from usefulness. You can't eat them. You can't build with them. You can't survive a winter because of them. Everyone simply agrees they matter. That shared belief, almost a collective hallucination, becomes the foundation of an economy. Cowrie shells eventually spread across China, India, Africa, and parts of the Americas, often developing independently in societies separated by oceans and thousands of miles. Different civilizations arrived at the same strange conclusion. Objects don't need practical value to become money. They only need collective trust. The pattern appears again and again throughout history. In fact, the Chinese character for money, bei, is literally based on the shape of a cowrie shell. Even more astonishing, cowrie shells remained currency for over 4,000 years, outlasting countless kingdoms, governments, and economic systems. Long before modern banking existed, humans had already discovered the strange secret underneath every financial system on Earth. Money works because people believe it works. Most people think money solves civilization. Very few realize that it may also have created one of humanity's biggest problems. Unfortunately, money also created a problem nobody anticipated. Before money, wealth was difficult to preserve. Grain spoiled, animals died, food disappeared during famine or war. Even powerful families struggled to store prosperity for long time periods. Currency changed that forever. For the first time in history, wealth could survive the person who earned it. A durable token, silver, gold, shells, coins, allowed value to accumulate across generations. Families could store power permanently. Inequality stopped being temporary and became structural. That single invention transformed civilization. The same system that freed humans from the chaos of barter also made lifelong poverty possible on a scale history had never seen before. Money didn't merely solve an economic problem, it reshaped human society itself. And in many ways, we're still living inside the consequences of that transformation. In 1993, archaeologists excavating a Bronze Age settlement in Turkey uncovered a sealed clay vessel containing more than 100 carefully weighed silver fragments. They weren't coins or jewelry, just irregular pieces of metal prepared for trade. The vessel had been buried around 2500 BCE. Someone had spent years saving that silver. Then something happened, and they never returned to retrieve it. By modern standards, the silver itself wasn't extraordinarily valuable, yet every fragment had been carefully preserved, wrapped, and protected. Whoever owned it understood something deeply human. This wasn't merely metal, it represented future choices, future security, a form of stored hope. Sit with that for a moment. A human being living 4,500 years ago carefully saved resources against an uncertain future, not because a government taught them economics, and not because a philosopher invented financial theory, but because some ancient temple in Mesopotamia once needed a better way to organize grain distribution. At its core, that isn't sophisticated economic planning. It's a person trying not to be afraid. Tonight, somewhere inside your wallet or your phone, you're carrying the direct descendant of a Mesopotamian grain receipt. The number in your bank account isn't truly money, it's a promise. The same promise those ancient temples began making thousands of years ago. The same collective agreement that a shell, a coin, a banknote, or a glowing number on a screen means something valuable. Nobody formally invented that agreement. It grew slowly, out of debt, out of fear, out of the deeply human need to believe tomorrow might somehow be okay. And now you know where money really came from. If this changed the way you think about money, history, or human civilization, subscribe to Mind BC for more stories hiding underneath everyday life. And tell me in the comments, what should humans have invented instead?